Well, hello, good people of the internet. Today I want to talk about a thing I love, and that is a feature of Golang that leads to another feature of Golang. And that specific feature, the first feature, is multiple return values. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. The main reason I think it's great is because how it leads to handling errors. And I really do think the Golang team have come up with a great answer to general error handling in Golang. And in almost every case, it looks an awful lot like this. Okay, so you check for a problem, respond with an error, or you try and do a thing. If there was an error that returned, then you handle that error. If not, you don't. So here's an example. I tried to pass a multi-part form. This is someone is uploading something to me. So I get a file access, which is actually an interface, which is another great thing, because that could be one of two major different types. One is in memory and one is an actual file. A handler gives me extra information about that type, and if something went wrong, then I get this error. That's great. I really think this is fantastic, because I now know that there was something went wrong immediately. That if there was an error and it comes through like this, if error is not equal to nil, that means there is an error and I can respond to that error. And otherwise, I can carry on working with this uploaded file. And then I can do another thing that doesn't have an error, but I needed a new location. And if that location came in blank, then I get to handle that. Upload path. Converting the path. This is my own function I wrote, but that also returns an error. And if there's an error there, I respond. And it just leads to this very, very tidy, very clear, ordered way of doing things. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background, because like most people my age, at university, it was Java. Java was the language everyone was learning. So this isn't particularly against Java, it's more against exceptions. But Java was the language I learned exceptions in, so this is going to be a little bit about Java. Java doesn't allow two value returns. In Java, your function returns one thing. So, if you have a problem while you're processing this, you have a few options. I'll show you quickly. I'll open it up. I just wrote this quickly. It's useless code. Basically, the error case in all three attempts at answering this problem are a random number is wrong. So if math.random3 is 0, there is a problem, and we need to let the caller function know about this problem. And there are a number of ways of doing this. I mean, if you return an int type, you've got some options, and in dothing2, in the same problem, we simply return not a number, and now the user can check for against not a number. Or if it was an object, you could return null, right? That's quite common in Java. If you say, if I'm expecting an object returned and what I get back is the null object, then I need to check against that null object. And the other option is perhaps you want to actually return the object whatever, but you want to tell the user there was a problem. Well, the only way you can do that in Java is to create another class. So I've just created this public inner class called thingres, and that has your actual result and then an OK value. Well, that could be any kind of warning message or something else. And then I needed to create a constructor for it so that I could do this, and then inside the constructor create this. That's quite a lot of code there just to be able to send back two parameters, which is basically what I'm doing here. And on the outside, you would then need a thingres. So the most common way people respond to problems, unexpected problems in Java, and this is fair, right? I totally agree. In Java, because you've only got one parameter, your response, the most effective response you're gonna have, is to throw an exception, and then on the outside the user has to try and then catch this exception. Now if this is in the middle of a big bulk of things, or if you've got lots of things that call exceptions, then you could have to catch several exceptions. And the thing I always hated about exceptions is that they break the flow, right? They break because you have to drop out and you catch it and it goes to a completely different place, which is why they have this key word in these languages called finally, and I think it happens in most languages that handle exceptions, is some stuff needs to happen whatever errors get caught, right? It doesn't matter which exception you caught, if there was an exception, all exceptions need to do this finally block. I hated them so much I ended up writing methods that look like this. Hang on, let's tab it out properly. So I would try integer.parse. I did this all the time. My new parse int method was integer.parse, took the try catch, and I took a default value. I found it easier to write code that looked like this and then to respond with code like this. I hated exceptions. I really, really hated exceptions. And I always wanted to do the 2 parameter return thing. So coming to Golang is almost the most natural thing I could do. I always felt that this was the right way to handle it. And before Golang, there wasn't really a language that allowed me to. I mean, Python exists and does it, right? You actually create a tuple, but I really like the handling and the natural response here, that you're going through, you try and do a thing. These are valid responses. They're normally nil responses or empty responses or something. And so if we read through this entire library, I've got one function that doesn't look like a pure example of this. Okay? On a root wrap, that's for the file. These 2 functions here, which create a file view, so you view the file system, they kind of create a HTML picture of the file system. It looks a bit like this. So you can open up the various folders, and folders have children. So this is just a view of a file system. Most of the stuff in there is rubbish. So I created that in HTML. That's what these 2 functions do. And even in this one, there is an attempt at doing something where if there's an error, it returns there's an error, I couldn't do it. And even here, this is the same basic method. It tries to join the path if the path isn't correct. So there are 2 cases which are exactly the same, and then it has to do this loop and a slightly recursive thing to go through the folders. Then the file getter. To get a file, we read the string. If there's convert the path. If there's an error converting the path to within the scope that the user's allowed to access, then we just say no. Then we try and read the file. If there's an error reading the file, we return no, there's an error. I think that should probably actually be I think I know why I've done that way. That should probably still be an HTTP error though, so let's do that now. http.error. Then you put W, because that's the writer, and then could not read file plus, and that will be 0400. No, it's just 400, isn't it? I think that's better. So we're just saying to the user, we can do this. In fact, this is just something that, this was my first stuff that I was doing I couldn't do, and I've started returning these errors so I can read them at the browser end. Probably need to actually log this as well. This is one I'm working on right now, by the way, so we'll work with that. Okay, get rid of that. So all of these functions have a very straightforward strings. If there's this is reading the form value, and if there was nothing there to read, no file name, then we return the error. Again, we try and convert the path, make it fit within the user scope. If there was an error doing that, i.e. that the user tried some dots or something in their file path, then we just tell them we couldn't write that file. And so all of this code just look, if there's an error, do this, just goes forward. So try and read it, try and convert the path, and then try and write the file. And you can pretty much ignore the error as you're reading the code, can't you? It's like, get the new file name, convert the path, remove the file. Get the new file name, convert the path, check the error, make a directory for that path, and if there's an error, let the user know. File mover, get the path, get the new path, convert the path, make sure it's a safe path, convert the second path, make sure it's a safe path, rename the file. And if there's any error, the user will get an error message. File uploader, exactly the same. At first it checks if there's a method, but it's the same basic principle. Checks that it's a post. Checks then it reads the multi-part form, as we said, gets the error. If there's an error, it doesn't do that. Make sure to close the file. Gets the new file location. Again, if there's a problem with that. Tries converting the path, make sure that that's a safe path. Again, this is me just making sure that path is safe again. Oh yeah, because I had another file name. They had a file name and a path to put it in. They were separate parameters, so I had to check on both. And at each point, we just have a place, a simple check. Do a simple thing, check if it works. Now, for me, this just makes life simpler, you know? It's so easy to read code that looks like this and see what it's supposed to be doing. So, if you are new to Go, I recommend learning to think this way. It just makes life really easy. Public libraries will make a lot more sense, and your code will be very readable. If not, if you've been doing this for a while, then appreciate this. This is a great thing to be able to write code that looks so simple to read. Yeah, so hopefully that you guys will appreciate this too. If you don't appreciate it, then tell me why. If you don't like this feature or you have a reason, something that bothers you, tell me why. If you absolutely adore exceptions, tell me why. Like and subscribe and do all the other things, you know. And have a great couple of weeks. I'll be back in a few weeks with something else.